noticed that a lot of you did not understand the last chapter on default rules and false negatives and positives concerning the Challenger explosion. And I don't blame you. It's super confusing. I kind of thought that you might have already encountered false positives and negatives in your other courses and would have been familiar with that, but it's okay. So I just want to explain really briefly and simply the false positives, false negatives, and how they relate to the Challenger case. Okay, so a false positive and false negative in your mind, you just translate the word false to wrong, okay? It is a wrong positive and a wrong negative. So that's the easiest way to think of it. So you go in and get a COVID test and you have a wrong positive. That means that the test says you have COVID when you don't, okay? Conversely, if you have a wrong negative, right? False negative, you just put the word wrong there, a wrong negative. The COVID test says you don't have COVID when you do. All right, so what does this have to do with engineering? I think this is really an interesting ethical and critical thinking issue surrounding default rules. Most tests, and not only like medical tests, like pregnancy tests or COVID tests or AIDS tests, they can't be perfect. They can't be right 100% of the time, okay? And other tests like statistical, you're running a statistical analysis for, I don't know, the safety of the number of car accidents that will occur if you increase the speed limit, okay? That kind of test also cannot be 100% perfect. So you have to decide when you're making these tests which way, whether you want to minimize the false negatives or minimize the false positives. This is the example I was going to give, but I'm kind of hesitant. So for porn actors and actresses, they have to take STD tests, I don't really know, regularly, okay? So suppose the AIDS test they give them, what way would you want the makers of the test to skew if you have to choose? If it can't be 100% accurate, do you want it to give more wrong positive results or wrong negative results? Okay, if the test tells someone they give a wrong negative result, that you don't have AIDS when you do, then the porn actor returns to work and infects. This could be disastrous for like sex workers and the porn industry, right? You don't want the test to tell, you don't want it to be wrong about someone not having it when they do, okay? You would rather err on the side of telling people they do have AIDS when they don't, okay? And that's kind of sad and scary, but if you can't be 100% right, you better be careful. All right, so which way your test is skews to be wrong about the positive result or wrong about the negative result, it totally depends on the context and what your aim is. All right, so scientists who are doing research in a non-applied setting where they are trying to publish their results in journals are very careful not to publish things that are wrong, because your default rule is to minimize false positives, okay? So your net is going to be, I can make a Venn diagram for this. You're gonna leave out true things, okay? You're gonna say you're less certain than you actually maybe are, okay? You are going to default to leaving out things that are true, okay? That is the default rule, the epistemic default rule. But when you're talking about safety, okay, now you add in a whole nother goal. And the goal is ton of things like public health, people's rights, you know, not killing people, not causing mass disaster, not having your nuclear power plant explode and have cancer. So if it is an ethical context, right, you don't want to leave out things that are true. Okay. So if it's true the Challenger is going to explode, okay, you want to be wrong. You'd rather be wrong about your assertion that it's going to explode and it doesn't explode. You'd rather be wrong about that in applied contexts. So what you're going to do the opposite, your default rule. So when you don't know the odds, or if the odds are kind of uncertain, you know, the scientists at Thiokol say, oh, look, they put together this data, you know, the Challenger launched at this temperature and this temperature and this temperature. We have this other data about O-rings performing. We kind of think that this is a bad idea. Okay, but they're not sure. Wouldn't you rather, so here's two options. Okay, you say that the Challenger is going to explode, but you're wrong about that. It would have been fine. Okay, so that's one option. You're wrong when you say it's going to explode, but it doesn't. Okay, so you say stop the launch, it's gonna explode, don't go. So they don't go that day, but they're wrong. Everything would have been fine. Okay, so that's one default. Okay, the other way to default is to say, let's go ahead with the launch. Okay, and you say it's going to be fine, but it's not. Okay, that's the other default rule. You say, go ahead, it's going to be fine, but it turns out not to be fine and it explodes, right? You'd much rather be wrong about it saying it's going to explode and it doesn't, rather than the other way. This can all boil down to what better safe than sorry means. In scientific context, better safe than sorry means it's better not to say something that's false, right? Let's just leave out, if we're unsure about anything, we'll just leave it out. Better safe than sorry concerns what's true. In engineering, in applied context, when you're going to send your device out among the general public or expose people to it, better safe than sorry has a different meaning, okay? There's a truth component, but there's also a safety component.